God love you if you're here for the first time. That's all I'm saying. I want to tell you a little story. When I was a young boy, my father and I never really got along. I mean, we didn't fight that much. We didn't argue that much. It's just that we just couldn't relate to one another. I was like an alien baby, that came into my family that was dropped there, the one who didn't think or act or feel like anybody else in my family. I was the wild child, the black sheep of the family, the one that's always pushing the buttons and testing limits. Is there anybody here that can relate to that? Were you that child? Look, a lot of y'all are weird. Yes. I'm pretty sure that my dad thought that my mother was messing around with the milkman because the two of us had not one single thing in common, not one. It was always like this, like he was from Mars, I was from Earth, or something like that. When I was a kid, my dad would go quail hunting in the fall. That was one of his pastimes. And to his surprise and to his amazement, one day I showed interest in what he was doing. So he promised to take me hunting with him. And he loves to tell the story of what happened, even today, that cold autumn day out there in the woods, because apparently my interest in hunting wasn't as deep as either of us thought. Because as he says, Chris, you got out of the car, you shot the gun once, and then you got back in the car where you spent the rest of the morning running the battery down in the car, listening to the radio with the heater on. Clearly, nature has not designed me for the great outdoors. And that is why I wasn't born until air could be conditioned. All air should be conditioned. The woods ain't no place for a boy like me, let's just say that. I'm much more like Ava Gabor. I just adore a penthouse view. But I digress. Back to the story. I think it was 5th grade, or it might have been 6th grade. By then it became pretty obvious that my father didn't have much interest in me. And you could tell because he spent a lot more time with my brother than he did me. And his emotional absence was starting to affect my self-esteem. When something goes wrong in a family, psychologists say it's normal for the children to think it's their fault. So that's what was happening to me. I just thought there must be something wrong with me because my own dad doesn't really want to have anything to do with me. But being the communicative person that I am, because I've always been this way, I decided I'd call a meeting. Let's have a meeting. So I called my dad into a meeting. There was no written agenda, but there was a meeting, and I just asked him why. Why don't you want to spend any time with me? And he didn't have an answer. He just promised to spend more time with me in the future, which he never did. So as a result of this, I grew up pretty angry and resentful towards him. There were many years, in fact, I think probably an entire decade, where we just did not speak. As they say, of course, the sins of the father become the sins of the son. So like my own father, I wasn't emotionally present for a great deal of my young adulthood, and as a result, failed miserably in all of my personal relationships, because who knew it's kind of hard to have a successful relationship with someone who's not present emotionally. Who knew? Well, I blamed my father. It was his fault that I kept failing in my personal relationships because he wasn't present for me. He should have been a better parent. He should have been more present. He should have spent more time. So for a lot of years, way into my 30s, I felt a lot of anger and a lot of resentment toward him. And I kept waiting for that day that, we're all waiting for the person who did you wrong to take responsibility for it, for them to call you up and say, "I'm really sorry, son. It was my fault. I'm really sorry." Of course, that day didn't come. It never really does come. And so I had to face the choice that we are all faced with. Heal it myself or live with it for the rest of my life. I decided to choose the former, and through this teaching, I found my way into healing. I found my way to forgiveness. And here's the interesting thing. When I got healed, when I was fully healed of this, a funny thing happened. All of a sudden, my dad just reappeared in my life. He came back into my life of his own accord. I didn't call him. So I guess maybe he sensed that it was safe now, that I wasn't angry anymore, that I didn't blame him for all the things that were going wrong in my life, for my own inadequacies. And I'll never forget the conversation that we had that day. It was kind of strange because our roles were somehow reversed in that conversation. He was like the son now, and I was the father. And it was strange, but somehow it seemed kind of right at the same time. I'll never forget what he said. He said, "Son, I feel guilty." And I said, "For what, Dad?" And he says, "I don't think I was a very good father." And I said, "Well, Dad, did you do the best you could?" And he said, "Yes." I said, "Knowing what you know now, would you do things differently?" And he says, "I would do everything differently. I would raise my children completely different." And I told him, I said, "Dad, we're all grown. All of your kids are grown. We are all adults. We're responsible for the quality of our own lives now. Whatever failures we've had are our own. They're not your fault. What I didn't say is our successes are our own too, and you can't take credit for them." My father came to me that day and in his own way asked for my forgiveness, which I gave him. Oddly enough, he still says he feels guilty, but I can't do anything about that. He'll have to find his own way to heal that. The moral of the story can be found in the reading that you've done already in New Design for Living, the reading that we're doing in the book for the whole year. Dr. Holmes said, "We are all confronted with the unpleasant task of looking at ourselves in a mirror and pointing at ourselves with an accusing finger, saying, 'You did it. You did it.'" Years ago, after teaching one of my science and mind classes, a student came up to me and said, "Dr. Chris, I just hate you. I just hate you." And I said, "Well, why? I'm a nice guy. Why do you hate me?" And she says, "Because after everything you've taught me, I know I can never go back to being a victim anymore. I know I'm responsible for the quality of my own life, and there's no one else to blame anymore, and I hate you." And I said, "It's okay, one day you'll love me." It is normal for every child to one day either think this or look at their parents and say it out loud, "I hate you." It's all part of maturing. Reaching that point where you become aware that you are in charge of your own destiny. It is the day you realize that whatever is going to become of you is going to come from your own making. It's no one's responsibility to make your life a success but your own. Here's the truth, as hard as it may be to hear. As long as you are blaming someone else for who or where you are in life, you're still just a child. Your body may have grown up, your body may look like an adult's, but your mind never matured. You're still just a rebellious teenager, mad at the world for making you take responsibility for your own behavior, just like I was. Mad at my father, blaming him for all the things that went wrong in my life and my own character defects. Look, everything that has happened to you in your entire life has brought you to the person you are right here, right now, today. Everything that has happened to you has brought you here, good or bad, right or wrong, just or unjust. Whatever label you put upon it, all of it has brought you to the person you are here today. And this, my friends, is the power moment. This is the point of decision for you. This will determine the rest of your life, because now here is where you have to decide, will you take whatever good there was from your past and move on, regardless of how little amount of good there was, or will you stay hurt, stay mad, be angry, hold on to your resentment, and let it infect the rest of your life? You're the only one who can make that choice. And listen, I don't want to trivialize your pain. I don't want to minimize your hurt. I get it that human life is hard. It is. The ignorant and the cruel always seem to be around somehow. Boys get bullied. Girls get raped. People you love die. There's no shortage of sad or bad experience in a world filled with lost souls trying to find out who they are. I understand some of you have been hurt, and some of you have been hurt deeply. But let me also remind you, there is still a part of you left untouched by it all. Still a part of you that is powerful, a part that has never been affected by any of your human drama and hardship. A part of you that is the greater part of you, by the way, that has never been hurt by anything that happened. That part is your spirit. It is the true essence of who you are. It is your God identity, and it is the source, because you wondered where it came from. It is the source of the strength that you mustered to survive what you went through, and it is the wisdom you now need to heal and to move on. To move on. You know, there are a lot of places that you can go to get comfort for your misery. Lots of places where people are very anxious to tell you their own stories of survival, how they made it through in a cold, cruel world out there, tell you their story and compare them to yours to see who suffered the most. There is no shortage of victims in this world and proud survivors. What we have a shortage of are powerful people. Powerful people. People who have tapped into that inner source within them, used it to heal their past, and move on to create a better future. This may not come as a surprise to you, but I got to be honest with you. CSL, this community, Center for Spiritual Living, this is not a comfort station. It's not. We will love you unconditionally, perfect, just as you are. We will love you until you can love yourself. We will believe in your good until you can believe in it yourself. We will see your wholeness. We will hold a vision of your perfection in prayer until one day you'll be able to see it. And we will support you in whatever way we can, but we will not support your victim consciousness. We will hold you close. We will comfort your pain for a while. But then we expect you to get up. We expect you to dust yourself off, to take your power back from those who misused it and used it against you, and to make something out of yourself. And what you'll find around here, if you stay, are an awful lot of people who've done just that same thing. Powerful people who have not let their past infect their future. And that's the phrase of the day. Don't let your past infect your future. I have to tell you the truth. If you look around the room, you're going to see we're not exactly living Pollyanna lives. You know, we aren't the purest of people here at CSL. We're not the most righteous. If you want righteous, you have to go down the street to some other church, you know. There are some misfits here. There's some hot messes. There are some hot messes in this church. There are some people here who have really been through hell. But that's the point. They went through hell. They didn't stay there. And they didn't start defining their value and gaining their self-esteem by surviving one miserable thing after another. Because you see, at CSL, we understand that you are not here to survive misery. What diabolical plan would that be of a perfect intelligence who set you up on an obstacle course just to see how much you can survive? There is no such design in the universe. You are not here to survive, you are here to thrive. You see, no matter what kind of horrible circumstance you have managed to survive, the truth is you are never more than one thought away from total and complete healing. One thought, one step away from total and complete freedom. But you will never, ever get to that place if you are still blaming somebody else for where you are now. You have to grow up first. You have to mature and start taking responsibility for all of your life. When people come to CSL and they hear me say that, when they hear me say, you are responsible for all of your experience in life. When I say that, sometimes that's not what they hear. Sometimes what they hear is, it's your fault. You made all this bad stuff happen to you. So let me be clear. None of it is your fault. And all of it is your responsibility. All of it. In the early years of my ministry, I think about year 5, I went to visit a woman in the hospital. A woman who'd been beaten and raped. Someone who'd been in our teaching for a long time. And when I went into the hospital room, I will never forget this experience as long as I live. I could see her there with her face bruised, battered, her forehead cut, her eyes were black, and she was sitting up in bed reading some New Age book. I couldn't see the title of it, and I said, what are you doing? And she said, I am trying to find out what I did to attract this. I'm trying to find out what's in my consciousness that drew this experience into my life. And my heart just sank. It just broke. Do you know that sometimes the only value to be gained from having some experiences is the wisdom and knowledge that you never want to have this experience ever again as long as you live? Sometimes that's it. I told her, I said, it's not your fault you got raped. You didn't invite that to happen. There's nothing in your consciousness that caused or attracted that into your life. But now that it's happened, you do have to choose how you're going to respond. That is what responsibility is. It is your ability to respond to any given situation. So I said, will you respond by living the rest of your life in fear? Will you be too afraid to go in a car garage? Will you be too afraid to leave the house? Will you respond by hating men, mistrusting them, being bitter, and allowing all that mistrust and bitterness to ruin every relationship you have in the future? Or will you heal? Will you forgive? Will you find peace and then move on to create a powerful life? She chose the latter. And we worked together for some time until she was fully and completely recovered. She's still here, She's still here. You see her here at CSL all the time. You never have a clue who she is. You wouldn't know. I know who she is. You'd never be able to tell what she's been through because there's not a mark on her. Not a mark. Physically, emotionally, spiritually, no scars. In fact, she's one of the smartest women I've ever met. Hugely successful in business, crazy in love with her partner. And all of that happened because she didn't let her past infect her future. Your mind has an unlimited capacity to create something new. The source of your power, the God identity that I was talking about earlier, is the real you. It's the real you. It's not your story. It's not your pain. It's not all the terrible things that you've survived. The real you, the true essence of who you are, is still in here. It is still alive. It is still empowered. And it is always ready to move on with your life the very minute that you are ready to put the past behind you and start creating a better future. The very moment you decide. The fact is, at some point in our lives, we've all been a victim of something. There's no shame in that. But there is a big difference between those who wallow around in that, those who fall victim to it and allow what happened to them then create the rest of their life in misery and pain. There's a difference between those and the ones who pick themselves up, clean themselves off, take their power back, and move on. Be one of them. Be one of them. And so ends the lesson.